Welcome, everybody, to the Key Games Podcast here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. I am Josh Beiser, and join me, my co host, indie developer working on the upcoming game Samurai Pig, Joshua Reyes. How are you doing this weekend?
I'm doing all right. We're on a Sunday now, so it's a little different day.
Mm
So I'm just a little more exhausted, I guess.
hmm.
Yeah, a lot of stuff I've been. This is going to be a nice little break from UV maps and uh, collisions and stuff like that in a game. So definitely dealing with a lot of Unreal 5.1 updates. So that's been something for me. But other than that, Josh, how are you holding up, my man?
I am doing alright. Been trying to keep busy after, of course, those family issues from last
Yes,
week.
yes.
And just been, I got into the IGDF for the judging, so I did last year. So they invited me back, which means even more games to play.
More games to play. I don't even know how you can play even more
hmm
games.
And I got like 50 submissions from developers after my one tweet went viral just before Twitter blew up. So that's been interesting. I'll become Twitter
Definitely.
famous when it's a smoldering crater, possibly.
That's right. Last man standing, man. That's man.
Mm-hmm. Other than that, let's see. Gotta get ready to write my next book at some point. So I think that's going to be starting in like a few weeks.
Did you
And
already decide on the topic for that one?
yeah, that's the RPG one.
RPG one. That's right. That's right. Awesome.
Oh yeah, so definitely a lot of things going on. And let me make sure that I was going with. There we go. Discord's just being
Got
a little
Joe.
weird.
Welcome, Joe and Artem. Welcome.
But as everyone knows, we're right into award season for the game
Yeah.
industry. It's already December in a few days, which is still freaking me out right now that
I
the
keep
year's almost
checking the
over.
date. Like every day I wake up, I look at the date. I'm like, that it can't be today's date. It's too fast.
hmm But
Too fast.
Game of the Year season is going to be happening very shortly. We're going to be talking about the Game of the Year awards next week, or just the idea of award season. I'm sure maybe we'll do like a joint, or we'll like try and get together for watching the Game Awards, or streaming it and
Yes.
just being shocked at the winners and so on.
Yeah. Just reactions to the winner.
hmm
Or not shocked, more like, oh, that was expected.
But last week's topic, we discussed the idea of prestige games. Games that were meant to be kind of very on the artistic side, very much about the maturing of the video game industry. And the ones that typically get picked up for award wins or award nominations. This week, we are going the opposite direction. We are talking about the games that by all definitions, they are not going to be mentioned at the Game Awards this year. And good chance that a lot of mainstream sites won't even know about them or even have ever even heard of them, let alone list them. And what does this mean, I guess, for the market now? Because, as we said, one of the bigger things that have happened with the game industry the last decade has been this kind of, I guess, growing legitimacy with the increased power and availability of game engines, schools, colleges, libraries, of course, or the places I talk to, being more and more interested in video games. So there's been this kind of overall maturing. But what does that mean for the games that don't want to be considered high art? What about games like Ultra Kill, Binding of Isaac, the many itch.io games that we've seen and try to play? So, as an indie developer, I want to get your thoughts on this. Like, what do you think about the games that they're not aiming to be that Game of the Year winner or that, 10 million copies sold mega hit?
Love it. I love it. And I think that's like the heart and soul of game development. And as we were talking about, we're like can go in two tangents here. Like if we're talking about studying like really good games or really high art games and stuff like that, what are you going to take away from them? I think you can take a lot more away from these type of games that are literally just trying to be games, right? They're not trying to achieve some type of prestige or anything. It's just game for game's sake. And I think that it really allows for a ton of experimentation, of course, because we're in the indie space. You can do all kind of things, try all kind of really name stuff, and then when you keep the bar low, you can do a lot more stuff, right? Instead of saying,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, this is an epic cinematic and then you're playing it and the core gameplay doesn't work right or whatever. But when you have a lot of these games are really distilled down to really good core gameplay loops, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and just excellent gameplay. So I think like the essence of it is it's really distilling games down to like their basic form and like one of the best ways of maybe studying them in a way.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the games that we've had a chance to play, and especially getting submissions from indie developers, has really highlighted that kind of ingenuity that we
Yeah.
see from the independent space. And again, I've written about this, and we've talked about it plenty of times here, that I really have kind of gotten tired of AAA games. I
Yeah.
haven't played the latest God of War game.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Elden Ring is going to make the list. I may just do a double, I hate Elden Ring, God of War for
I,
this
I,
year.
I'm on record on podcast saying Elden Ring amazing, and now I'm at the I'm with you like the same page about like AAA games. Like the first God of the last remake of God of War, I really loved it. We were
Mm-hmm.
talking about the last what was that fight?
The Valkyrie Queen.
Valkyrie, how cool the combat was and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, I could care less to even like try and play it. I'm very tired of the way that AAA games are made. Right, very cookie cutter,
Mm-hmm.
very factory esque. Factorio esque creation of the games, right? Without the soul. And then, so when we're talking about these non prestige games, those really hit the heart and soul of what games are, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
you, of all people that play so more games, and I don't know who,
Mm-hmm.
like right, that like the AAA games don't really offer that same type of experience that you can take away from a non-prestige type game, right?
Mm-hmm. And even like again, like the AAA polish is certainly something to commend, and we've seen like
Right.
really great examples of AAA games that they get the idea of onboarding, they get
Right.
presentation very well done, and arguably better than a lot of indie developers.
For
And again,
sure.
that comes with, of course, marketing, prestige, and having a
Massive
far larger budget.
massive teams and budget, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you can have a whole room dedicated. Okay, how are we going to get people to understand all these mechanics that we've created? So you have a couple people in the room figuring out, onboarding, tutorials, things like that, compared to maybe 5 people on a team on an indie, and they're like, I don't know how they're going to fit. Hopefully they get it. You know what I mean? And so yeah, there's definitely difference. AAA can definitely hit some high notes that indie cannot touch, right? Like voice acting,
Mm-hmm.
onboarding, just sometimes tutorials, like you said, and other facets, of course. But there are things that a AAA game can never have, like concerning
Mm-hmm.
heart and soul. Like there's some that come really, really close to it, but you still, as you said right now, like you're kind of tired of AAA. It's like there's just this veil of like mediocrity almost that I feel now from AAA, and like amazing tech, right? We have amazing graphics, we have amazingly talented people because the industry is like what 30 years plus now. So we
Mm-hmm.
have people that have been working in the industry teaching. So we have people that understand how to get excellent graphics, excellent cinematics. We take people from other fields, we put them in there, we take psychologists. We can put all those things in there in a AAA game. When you take that to an indie game, you don't have that so much. So you have to, because of the constraints, you're forced to create something else, more ingenuitive, more creative, more out of the box, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I mean, even like with like Nintendo these days, I'm not as keen on like rushing out to get their games. I think some of it is the price, and I
Yeah,
think another aspect
yeah,
is just the general like unavailability of their games. I think this is something that could be a greater topic, but I feel like we're reaching the point where platform exclusive games needs to go away. Like I
for
feel like
sure.
it's not really helping as much in the industry as it was again, when you only had to buy one console or
For sure,
no
it was
digital
definitely
games.
for sure it was definitely a tactic back then. And then now, how we were talking about with tools, they've reached an apex where cross-platform development is not the biggest barrier or a barrier that it used to be before. Like I can actually with Unreal, I could actually create a version that would cross-platform play with Android, cross-platform play with an Apple device if they're not having legal issues, cross-platform with PC, PS4, all that's available. So the even with Unity, right, that's available and those APIs are there.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, having exclusives, there's no reason to have that now. And then instead opening up the ecosystem to everybody is just, all boats race
Mm-hmm.
oceans, right?
Yep, and it's just getting harder to, I think, again, experience a lot of these games. I think one of the
Yeah.
bigger aspects has been, I think we've gone past kind of like the gimmick or like
Yeah.
weird platform phase. So like again, like the Wii kind of brought this era of, well, we can't put a Wii game on the PC or on the Xbox. So it's how you going to do motion controls. But again, like as we looked at over this past cycle with the PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One, and now the Switch, it's not really as experimental. And again, there's nothing stopping Nintendo to release a Mario game on PC anymore, outside of course, wanting all the money.
Yeah. I know like there's actually several topics like that we can branch out here from, but in especially like concerning with Nintendo, I feel like there's with AAA, there's just they've reached this thing where they don't feel like they have to push
Mm-hmm.
the boundary at all with it. It's just kind of like this regurgitation blender of the same thing over and over again, right? I don't know if you felt that. Like every
Mm-hmm.
game is basically the same. They're still great. They're still quality. Every Ubisoft game is kind of the same. Every God of War game is a little bit kind of the same, right? And it's like all there's not enough differentiation, and I think that's an issue. But it's like just that we've been oversaturated, and maybe like the gimmick of like the AAA game is kind of lost on us,
Mm-hmm.
and also consumers expect a ton from AAA games, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no respite or like apologies when there's errors in AAA games when they have such massive budgets and stuff like that. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
with indie non-prestige games, definitely there is. There's definitely you can be like, well, I accept that there's this bug here or there and stuff like that, but not the other way around, of course.
Mm-hmm. And as we said, indie developers have the ability to be more agile with their
Yeah,
game development.
yeah,
If something isn't working, a year in, any developer can pivot, they can change. What we've learned or what we've seen over the last decade, even with mega studios like BioWare and Blizzard,
whoa,
when
yeah,
there's an issue, they just keep going. It's the slow moving, Hindenburg. And
yeah,
and again, for people like us, we can see these issues coming, miles away. I remember when the whole Bioware Magic story broke with Anthem, and the entire time I was reading, I was going, "Of course, this is going to fail. Like,
yeah,
how is this not going to fail?" And again, like, I think it's both, as you said, it's like that level of clout that there's no one else that can challenge, but also it's that issue of, well, how can we change things and not get sniped by the other major developers. If
right.
our massive AAA game doesn't sell, if Call of Duty doesn't sell well, where are people going to go from there? So they just keep hitting the same notes and the same beats. And of course, as we're talking about this in late November, I think did the latest Call of Duty game come out yet, or is it coming out?
I've been seeing ads everywhere. I was in Walmart and I saw ads for Mountain Dew, Call of Duty, and on Taco Bell, so it should almost be out.
What? Huh. According to this, it was released October 28th.
Oh,
Right now, it has mixed reviews on Steam, but it has over 100,000 reviews on Steam right now.
wow.
So,
Wow.
even with those complaints, it's safe to say that Call of Duty has earned its money,
And
right?
there's
It's
money.
made.
It's almost like a blunt force.
Hmm.
They use like a blunt force like attack. Marketing, marketing, marketing. Scoop up as many people as possible, and who cares about the mixed reviews or who cares of that because they're gonna buy it again.
Hmm.
And yeah, and it's just that they're really cashing in on just that IP and that clout. And it's like, and most people, like we're talking about non-prestige games, what multiplayer game do you play the most, Josh?
Let's see.
The
Ultimate Chicken
shooting
Horse, Gunfire Reborn.
Gunfire. You play Gunfire
Yep.
the most, right? You're not playing Call of Duty with everybody. You're playing Gunfire. So like a different, but how many people have actually
Hmm.
heard of that game compared to Call of Duty, for example,
Yep.
right? And that's the thing. And I think that people would really enjoy if they played Gunfire, be it like be a breath of fresh air compared to the gray tones and
Hmm.
the same regurgitated Call of Duty things.
Yep.
Even though, I mean, quality gunfire isn't that hard to come by anymore, right? Like
Yep.
you can get decent gameplay, good quality gameplay in most shooters now. So that used to be a thing. I think back in I can't remember the era, but it used to be a thing where some would have excellent and some would have really bad. But now the playing field's pretty even. Most games have pretty decent, you know,
Hmm.
game fire.
And I think what you just said is a really important point that, again, 30 years ago, you weren't seeing indie games. You were never going to hear about them unless you already knew about them from some random site. There was no YouTube, there was no Twitch, the golden age, the pre
Yeah,
crazy internet age. But one of the things I think we've also saw over the last decade has been indie developers just really punching up. Again,
yeah.
like stuff like the Outer Wilds beating the Outer Worlds, Disco Elysium, Celeste. What was the other one? Returnal from
Returnal.
Studio Marquee. That it's not the case where a AAA studio is doing anything that would be considered unique
Yeah.
anymore in today's market. I mean, again, like I have Ultra Kill on the thumbnail for this week's show. Ultra Kill is very much the indie equivalent, or could even be even better than Doom Eternal
Yeah.
in terms of being this very reflex driven shooter. So, like you said, like a lot of the people who grew up playing games, they're now in the position to make these games. And one of the things that we've said, that gameplay and game design is such a unique field. It's not something that you can just go to school and just come out and say, "Oh, I understand all game design." It takes a lot of studying, and that level of study can be done by either a studio with millions of dollars of budgets and market research, or someone who grew up over the last 15, 20 years playing
Yeah.
nothing but platformers or
Yeah.
Metroidvanias or
Yeah.
shooters.
Yeah, that's a really good point about at the dawn, right? At the beginning,
Hmm.
everything was being figured out, right? How are we going to render this engine? How does a shooter work? How does a first person shooter work? Is third person shooter a thing? Like all that stuff was being figured out first, right? And then and we had the developers, and then we had people growing up playing these games, and then now, like you said, now they've played those games their entire lives, and they're at the point where they can play these games. So now it's like a different new cycle of games, right? So we have a
Hmm.
continuation of the same that Hindenburg of design still keep going. We have the agile indies, which are punching up,
Hmm.
right? And it's a good thing because like I think at this point AAA really needs to be shaken up. I don't know how, honestly, because it's basically just capitalism like 100% now, right? Like there's no other way around it, and that's why how many Marvel movies are there, right? How many Avenger movies are there, right? It's going to be the same thing that happens with every IP that's profitable at a big studio. They're going to continue to try and do it change as little as possible to keep as many people as possible,
Mhm.
retain as many as people as possible. They're not in there thinking. Sadly, okay, this is like probably one of the core points. Like the boardroom in the AAA, they're not thinking, how are gamers gonna love this game? How are they gonna enjoy it? How are we gonna break boundaries of gameplay, experimental amazingness that's gonna inspire generations? They're thinking, how can we extract as much money as possible from the players as possible? And that is the problem with
Mhm.
AAA gaming. And we can definitely feel it now, right? Like you feel it when you open up the game and you just know, right? You can tell by the blistering amount of marketing that's just
Mhm.
bombarding you. And you're like, wow, they just really want me to buy this game. And I mean, yeah, so I think that's the core issue there, Josh.
Yep. And if you want to hear something very depressing,
Yeah, for sure.
I looked up Call of Duty and the new one, and on the developer list, it lists 9 different studios as a developer for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. And again, it kind of just boggles my mind at this point that they need 9 different studios to make one annual game. And the even more tragic part about this is that they now list Toys for Bob. And I mean, Toys for Bob really got a huge name for themselves because they wanted to make the Tony Hawk remake. And they also, of course, did Crash Bandicoot 4, which is as far away from a prestige game, I think, as one could get. It's more like masochistic nightmare, I
You got a
think,
review coming up for that one?
if I ever do beat it before I go insane. But their big reward for making that game. This is something, as you said, like when it comes to like that marketing machine, is that the reward of being a AAA studio is kind of now you get to make the same game again and
And again.
again and again. And if you don't want to make that, we'll just put you on whatever is the latest big name game. You can work on a Call of Duty clone or a Madden. And Madden, I think, is another big example. Like, Madden itself, I think, would not be considered a prestige game, but it has been a very marquee studio or marquee franchise. And that has also suffered a lot in the past decade. And I think a lot of this has been kind of the maturing and the growing intelligence of consumers. That we're not in that period anymore where it's hard to find games. Where again, I can just close my eyes on Steam and I'll have 40 different games I could easily play. And people aren't as forgiving anymore when they hear about issues. I think Blizzard kind of imploding in on itself in the last 4 or 5 years has been, I think, a really big example of this. That, 10, 15 years ago, if anything bad came out about Blizzard, we would still probably buy those games because
Yeah.
who else was putting out games at
Yeah.
that level of quality, at that level of prestige?
Yeah.
Now it's like,
There
well,
was there was stuff leaking even back then. I
yep,
remember there was little things leaking, and like most people were. It was like the start. Like, should we still buy this game,
hmm
even though they crunched their devs? Should we still buy this game, even though they're horrible, like sexual harassment allegations? And at that time, like you said, there was no other place to get that type of game. But
hmm
now there's just a million quadrillion options. Like you said, close your eyes and you can find a million, just a ton of other options to play.
hmm and you don't have, again, you're not forced to play these games anymore.
Mhm.
There are, and I think, again, like there's another topic here about kind of how people, I think, still view the game industry as being monolithic. That if you're a gamer, that means that you play Call of Duty and Madden. Like that is it.
Yeah,
Those are the only 2 games that exist in
right.
the game industry. But again, I think the rise of YouTube and Twitch in this respect, and again, we can never get the roundtable together to talk about, the impact of Twitch and YouTube.
This
It
week, got
it
to this week.
it has done. I hope so. It has done a lot to elevate these games. I mean, look at something like Five Nights at Freddy's. You can love it and hate it as much as you like, but it blew up. And it could not, I think, have blown up at any other time in the game industry than it did in, like 2013, 2014, somewhere around there. Among Us, another big example. And again, no mainstream site or, game cover was going to talk about Among Us. Like, that was never going to happen. I hope you're okay there.
Often fit, yeah. Yeah, definitely. No, where were they talking about that terrible, looks horrible game? Like, I mean, they're only covering the AAA games, exactly. And see, that's the one thing, and that's like one of the best things that I really love that you do, Josh, is you cover all the games. Like, we need to cover these games because all these games go uncovered, and they're probably what you should be playing now. If you are sick and tired, when I think most people are, you know what? Let's go back to that monolithic thing real quick. Is that gamers now are so diverse? There's so many different niches of gamers now, and it's not like, I only play, because it was like that back in the day with the Xbox 360. All they played was Call of Duty. That's all they would. They knew no other game, or they would Madden. That was it. And now, gamers are so diverse, and they play just every type of different version, and we have different types of gamers, right? So we have hardcore gamers that just do MMOs, gamers that play, and like me, I play MMOs, fighting games, just whatever, and I'm a developer. You play every single game there is. So it's just, there is no monolithic market anymore. The market is so diverse now.
Yeah. And the level of quality has been, I think, a huge point about this. And again, like, as we've said, like, there is that misconception from a lot of people that just having a good game is enough. And again, we have certainly broken that myth many times over. But it's always funny, again, to see how the mainstream resonates when something is not mainstream and kind of enters that space. Again, going back to Elden Ring, how many people went on these insane rants about, oh, the game doesn't have quest markers, how are people going to figure this out, or, oh, I missed the tutorial, this is a horrible game and everyone should be ashamed to play it. Or even the idea of, as we've seen, when indie games kind of get into that bigger space. Slay the Spire is, I think, one of the big examples of this. I played that one, like, pretty much, like, first or second month of early access. No one was talking about. 6 to 8 months later in that year, all of a sudden I started seeing on Polygon, hey, I found this weird game called Slay the Spire. It's like a roguelike, but you use cards.
What? I don't understand it with cards. What's going on? I remember that. That was hilarious.
How is this going? It looks like this could be a great game, but it's so weird. I've never seen anything like it before. And I'm just sitting there going, just shaking my head. And Vampire Survivors, I think, is another really good example. It is certainly not a prestige game. This is, again, one of those beauties about the independent space, is that you can have these lightning in the bottle kind of moments, where this game just comes along and it's kind of like if you've seen like a giant pachinko machine. It's like the piece just falls like perfectly down, just lands right in like the jackpot. Like, oh, it just, like, why do anything else? And again, you can love or hate Vampire Survivor likes. We're going to see probably another few dozen between now and the end of next year. But it shows, I think, that level of mastery when it comes to mechanics. That this is where indie devs have the advantage. That you can do something weird and spiky, and it doesn't quite fit the mold of a Activision or a Nintendo, but it resonates with people. And put it at the right price, and sometimes it can just blow up. And I think going back to that point earlier about kind of the regurgitation of the AAA side, like, I've played one Mario game, I played one 3D Mario, I played one 3D Zelda game. Okay.
Yeah.
What else are you doing? Again, Breath of the Wild was, well, no pun intended, a breath of fresh air. It was a legitimately different Zelda game.
You know, played the second one. Is the second one even out? I don't even know.
No, I don't think
No,
so.
no. And are you gonna play it?
Maybe.
Maybe, maybe.
And I
And
mean, and to your point about Marvel games, I've just heard that next week the new that Midnight Suns game, the one from Firaxis, kind of like deck building tactical strategy from the guys who did XCOM. And I'm kind of either like again like with my XCOM log, I'm either like super duper excited about it or I don't care. Like I'm not sure where I land right now.
yeah, I'm with you like that on XCOM too. Sometimes I'm like, yes, and so I don't know. But yeah, man, it's just the constant regurgitation, the Marvel Avenger thing, syndrome, and we
Mm-hmm.
get to get the exact opposite with non-prestige games. I mean, for sure, if you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna study games, that's where you should. That's one of the places that you should be studying, right?
Mm-hmm.
For sure, is non-prestige games. Like again, like one of the main things is like getting like we always talk about core gameplay loops, cool mechanics, experimentation, and that's where it's at. That is a gold mine. And
Mm-hmm.
like, stay tuned to Josh's channel and you'll find tons of cool games that are breaking that mold. And so when you're studying, like you're not gonna study like God of War and be like, oh, okay, I learned so much from God of War. It's
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, it's not you're not. Or Horizon Zero Dawn and be like, dang, I wish I could make that game. That would be cool. That's probably what you're gonna walk away with, not like, okay, let's do it. And I have seen. Go
Yep.
ahead.
I was saying, and again, you're not going to see that unique mechanic
Right,
from a
right.
AAA studio.
Right. So yeah, so you're missing out on that. Like you're getting a lot of sanitation of gameplay mechanics, of games, of just the overall look, the feel,
Mm-hmm.
soul of them when you can get instead funky, crazy, experimental, fun, new. And one of the things like is like when we were talking about the golden age, everything was kind of new and
Mm-hmm.
experimental, right? Like that was the first time this game was like this, or this game existed of this type. And so that is what is happening right now. Again, we were talking about now we have this. I guess this would probably be the first cycle, right, of devs that have grew up playing games, studying games, and now are finally able to make them, or maybe the second cycle. I'm not sure. It depends.
Yeah.
It depends on how quick. But yeah, so it's a totally different indie game dev scene now than it was, back then, and it's just getting better.
Yep, and I think that's another very big point about this is that, as we've said, the level of technology that indies have access to today, and again, over the last decade, is miles above what it was like the decade before. Unity, Game Maker, Unreal, Godot. Again, my mind is blanking on the number of game engines that. Yep, go ahead.
Literally, yeah. Like, okay, so if I was trying to make, okay, because I was making games well, I was making games a long time ago, but we'll just go back 10 years ago, right? 10 years ago, it was very hard. Like, okay, I'm constantly harping about menus, right, and menu systems, and I'm harping about, and that like 10 years ago, that was very hard. Like one of my first games, the menu was like one of the hardest things. I had the game done, the game was literally done. This is why I harp on it. The game was done, but the menu was not finished, and that took longer than making the game itself, making the entire menu during, your
Hmm.
first one of your first runs during, publishing a game. And now that stuff doesn't really exist, right? You can get a model, you got marketplaces, you can get it rigged by AI, you have AI art generators, you have AI music generators, you have all kind of tools that we have with the game engines, of course, that we're talking about, Unreal, Godot, and just all the amazing implementations and API. Literally,
Hmm.
like a solo person can accomplish what a team of, I don't know, back 10 years ago couldn't even dream of,
Hmm.
right? So like we've definitely reached new levels in that respect. So not only do we have like chess level players of studying video games and master levels, that have studied them their entire lives. They've been working on them their entire lives. So now we have this entirely new, different version. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're not limited as an indie developer as much anymore. Again, like going back to what we were saying about with AAA games, that with a AAA game, a lot of what kind of wows people is what you can throw a lot of money at. Professional voice actors,
money,
graphics, commercials, advertisements, that kind of thing. But again, like this is kind of like the point that I've been like thinking about. When I play a game like God of War, when I played God of War 2018, I found so many issues with that game from a mechanical standpoint that most people, and most reviewers, I understand, I'm not talking about the consumer, they never bothered talking about. Like, there was nothing about these issues. Everyone, like, every review is just, oh, the story is so emotional and great and all that. And, the axe gets, you throw the axe and it comes back. Wow.
Back.
People were losing their people were losing their minds over that point. And I played the game, I was just like, okay. I just got, like, really annoyed with it. And, again, like, as we said, and for those of you keeping track, so we're going to piss off Elden Ring, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Marvel, don't forget about them. So we're kind of hitting all the main marks here. But like we've said, that it's hard to look at a AAA game and say, wow, this game is doing something unique and original. And I think one of the biggest examples besides Blizzard in this respect is Bethesda. That Bethesda, wow, it's hard to say Blizzard, Bethesda 10 times fast there. But Bethesda has been known for a long time.
Watch out, because one of them might buy each other and then it will be Bethesda.
There we go. Nice, we better start practicing that. But Bethesda for the longest time has been known as like that Titanic of, they release a game and everything stops. The Elder Scrolls, Fallout 3 and 4. But with stuff like, what was it, Fallout 83 or whatever it was called?
36.
Something like that. 76. Yeah. That people have just gone, wait, you're releasing this game with all these bugs and issues, and I can buy this indie game for like $20, and it is as bug-free as one person could possibly make? Why should I give you $60?
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned that earlier. Like, the price point definitely is definitely a problem. That was one of the turning points for Bethesda. I think 76 was just kind of like, that was kind of a turning point for the market in total. They were all kind of doing that. And that other, it's the price point, right? It's like, I've already played this Mario game. I'm going to pay $60 for this other Mario game, the same thing. I'm going to pay $60 for the second Zelda, the same Zelda. Because clearly we know now that AAA is just regurgitating the same thing, and they're too afraid to change anything or to go out of the box or just anything because of fear of losing the market. Again, the main thing is the boardroom's like, do it the same, make the same amount of money, make more, do the same thing. So that's kind of what happens there.
Yeah, and I think that is kind of like, again, going back to our last show, prestige games, why the AAA has really embraced like this kind of prestige, that they know they can't do it with, the unique gameplay. Right. So they're trying to like overwhelm your senses with everything else. Look at how much money we've spent on tree textures, how many professional voice actors and voice actresses are in our game. This emotional story that, makes Game of Thrones look like the Muppet Babies and stuff like that. But again, it's that case of, okay, it's fancy looking, but why should I care? And again, like, for someone like me, right now, I have a whopping, let's see, 1,239 indie games wishlisted on Steam. Let alone all the games.
Is there a limit to the wish list?
I haven't found one yet.
Okay, cool.
If I find one, maybe that'll be the date I'll be free. I'll break Steam once and for all. or they'll just upgrade my account to like super level, and then they'll give me
super Just Breaker level. Yeah,
yeah.
game breaker, steam breaker, Just Breaker.
There we go, exactly. But I can play an indie game and get a lot more out of it. I can enjoy it for whatever weird or unusual things it can do. And yes, it doesn't have the polish. Again, we can certainly argue to that point. But I know I'm getting an experience I'm not going to get anywhere else. And it's why I typically spend longer on games that have that like interesting, nugget of originality that it's like, okay, I haven't seen everything this game has. And it's why, even with games that I do like a platformer or whatever, that I may play it on stream and play it for far less, because I already, I've absorbed what this game is trying to do. I know it already. So it's like, okay, well, I can do 30 more levels of platforming, or I can move on to, the next original dish.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is when you're saying it's missing polish, polish is really only going to be like two things. It's either time or money, and that's really it. And it's the developer spent more time on, they didn't have the money and they didn't have the time, and so they gave you the best experience they could provide.
Mm-hmm.
And with AAA's having all the time, all the money, and everything, and they're still not producing even something that an indie dev can do. Like you were saying, you could play. I bet you. I'm not sure what other games were happening when 76 was released, but I guarantee you there was an indie team that was releasing a game just as good for half the price, or maybe even free. Like that was going on at that time, right? For sure.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't have the bugs and didn't have all that stuff happening. You know.
Yep. And for the chat watching, I'm curious, what are some other good examples of games you think, I guess, like in terms of the indie space, have managed to punch up in terms of mainstream appeal? Like Inscription, I think, would be another good example of that. Like Daniel Mullins has been making games since I think 2013, 2014, maybe even before that. And Inscription was kind of like his first big major name. It got again mentioned in the Game of the Year awards, and I think again there is that push by like websites and award shows to try and latch on to whatever game looks like it's going to be like fancy. If you remember last year, 12 Minutes was a game that people just could not stop talking about.
I
And
even remember that one.
yeah, it was that one that had James McAvoy. I forget his name. The guy who played the Green Goblin was in it as one of the voice
Wow.
actors.
Okay.
It was this, supposed to be the super high concept. Again, it had a Game of the Year, world premiere, I think, for that year as well. And again, it came out. People found a whole lot of problems with that. The story went some very weird places, which I won't spoil. But again, it just kind of came out. It had like its moment in the sun. We never hear anything else about it ever again. And it's kind of like that, what we talked about last week with the prestige games. That a lot of these games that, the critics try to, yell and scream, oh, you need to play this game. This is, what's going to define video games forever and ever. They typically just disappear.
Yeah, they don't, like Heavy Rain was supposed to define video games and change it forever. I remember hearing that. That did not change video games.
Mm-hmm. And like I'm looking at the Game of the Year awards, and maybe this will be like a preview for next week's show.
Let's hear it.
But
Plague's
like,
Tale is on there.
I'm looking at like the most anticipated game, the game that, according to them, has the potential to push the gaming medium forward.
Okay.
And on this list, we have 3 sequels: Final Fantasy, Resident Evil 4, The Legend of Zelda. You have the new Harry Potter game, which Harry Potter is also going through a period of a lot of people getting away from that franchise.
Yes, yes.
And you have Starfield. Again, another Bethesda game, which, it's kind of hard to be excited about that.
Yeah,
And
not excited about that game.
the only like shocking thing on this list was I am very surprised that Overwatch 2 was not listed. Oh wait, never mind. My mistake, it was listed under best
Was
multiplayer.
listed.
Well,
Okay.
I was wrong on that one. But I do love that Sifu is considered both a fighting game and an action game. It's going to get both awards because
We definitely got to try it. Are you going to do it on stream?
probably
Mhm.
because I know that all the fighting game fans are having or getting an aneurysm thinking about if Sifu wins best fighting game. That
Who's
will
nominated
cost
on best? Who's nominated for best fighting games?
uh where was it? Best sports, best sim and strategy, which I will have to look at that one later. Let's see, DNF Duel, the JoJo Bizarre Adventure game. Now I'm really considering just picking that up just to see how that one plays. King of Fighters, Multiverses, and Sifu. I would love again for either Sifu or Multiverses to win just to cause a
Yeah,
lot of pain.
I think it has to multiverse or Sifu. That's who I'm rooting for.
And I want Diablo Immortal to win best mobile game just to
Uh,
again, that's like pure chaos energy right there. I wanted to win.
That's yeah, that's pure chaos, Josh.
And again, when we look at kind of the non-prestige games, which most likely will make up the
Tony.
bulk of all my game of the year list this year, none of them I think will get mentioned by the
No.
AAA side. And I am still annoyed that Labia Ruina was not even like existed at last year's Game of the Year awards. Like to me, that just kind of invalidated the entire award show. And
What won the game of the year last year?
I do not know.
Now I'm interested in some.
Let's see. I think it was It Takes Two, which again, that kind of and Elden Ring was the most anticipated game. But again, it's that question of why does it win, and why don't non-prestige games get any kind of credit from the mainstream?
We're gonna have to start our own award show, Josh. I think that's just the way
I've,
about it.
I've been saying that for years now. I need my
Yeah,
own award show.
yeah.
And I guess like this is like another point I've been thinking about. Like, I just wonder when it comes to non-prestige games, like one of the reasons why they don't get covered. I guess is there? I just wonder if there's like this kind of like snub or
Yeah,
looking down. This
yeah.
idea of why should I play this weird little game? Like, what's in it for me? But if I cover Doom Eternal, if I cover Marvel's Avengers or whatever, I get clout or people will talk about me more. And I think this also goes with thank you, Pony, for that comment. That just like cut me like right here reading that. But it's an idea of why should I study, you know, whatever indie game when I can write a review about Pokemon or write a review about God of War? Or if let's say that one indie game does blow up, like Gone Home or Outlast, then I know that that's a safe game to cover. I know that's one that people will want to hear about.
Oh yeah, it didn't cut as hard as Crash 4 will, man.
Mm.
I only played like one level of Crash 4, honestly.
Oh god, I've been thinking about it. I should do like that uncanny meme of me like playing Crash 4, me going more and more uncanny as the level goes on. But again, like for like the AAA side or for the prestige versus non-prestige side, I do think that there is this case of if this game only has 100 reviews, if it only has 1,000 reviews on Steam, then
I
why should I care about it?
I think there's a couple factors, and there's probably some that we don't know about. For one, the game of the year list is very like it's odd. It seems very paid for, bought almost, if I would say. I don't want to like go conspiracy theory wise, but if we were going to look at it like, yeah, they do snub it. Like there's a criteria. It doesn't have enough reviews. There's not enough sales. Like it has to, um because I don't think that when they do the movie awards for like what is it, the art movie awards, they definitely
Mhm.
are not the most viewed movies. They definitely don't do the best sales. So I don't think sales should really be accounted for in it. And I just feel like, it's coverage, B, it's marketing, right? Sales, reviews, and they go through all those metrics. And then I feel there's a little bit of like underneath, some type of marketing corporation push, from like, they're like, hey, make our game this,
Mhm.
and or they just want to seem prestigious in their awards. There's no way we could give an award to, I don't know, name a game, Josh, that should win the award this year.
Library of Ruin to Cavity Busters. Again,
Yeah.
I could just
There's
list indie
no
games.
way. There's no way that Cavity Busters should
Hmm.
win game, right, compared
Yeah,
to,
or
I
even
don't
get
know,
a nomination, or even
even
be what.
even get noted, like even being brought up, right? Like
Mhm.
it should be in there. Like these games should be in the list and be known.
Yeah,
For
and
sure.
and thank you, Pony, for reminding me about the last cube. I
Last
even forgot
Cube.
about that one as well. With all the other, well, I'm up to like 600 games I've played this year. Again, I'm going to declare myself a top gamer because I played so many games this year. I think I deserve that
Definitely.
title going into
Definitely.
2023.
Yeah.
And again, it's that case of, well, if the game didn't get 10,000 reviews, and what's the point of looking at? What's the point of covering it? And I saw on Twitter that one of the developers I follow there, they were talking about how it feels like there's this prevailing element from like game journalism that the game journalists want to kind of be more famous than the games they're covering. And we could
Yeah.
even argue we see the same thing on YouTube and Twitch. And it's that idea, of course, of, well, if I cover The Last of Us 2, if I say yes, no, or maybe to it, that's still probably guarantee 100,000 reviews on a video. If I, gush about, trying to think of what's like the nichiest game, Vision Solve Reset that I played, what am I going to get from that? And again, it's a very transactional side when it comes
Yes.
to prestige
Yes.
games that has really turned me off on that aspect.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I was saying. I was like, the transactional, the corporate, soulless feeling of AAA just really has also turned me off too. Like, I didn't ever think I would be here where I'm like not excited for like a new Bethesda game or a new God of War, but I really could care less, and I want to see what a new cool indie game is out, and I want to see what a non. I'm way more interested in non-prestige games than I ever am in prestige games at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's just systematic or endemic of the market. Is that the right one? One of them.
One of those, yeah. Pony, I would so you just want to like go on stage, drop the mic, and then get out there before anyone is.
It
I
has QTEs.
ugh,
Really? I actually had someone tell me they wanted to make an entire game about QTEs.
mm,
Did I say that? Was that me?
mm.
I think that was
I hope the mic is
me.
picking up that noise I'm making right now. And yeah, it's that idea, like that transactional aspect of it. I think is one of the big differences between prestige and non-prestige games. That non-prestige game, it doesn't have the clout or the marketing or whatever it needs to kind of, force itself into the mainstream. And again, I could argue that's a lot about what I do with game wisdom. That I
Yeah.
know the stuff that I cover and my topics. I could easily do like, Last of Us 2 is, SJW bait or whatever the heck people are saying or make a video about Star Wars or Halo or whatever, and that could
Oh my
probably
gosh,
guarantee at
oh,
least 100,000 views on
that would
video.
do it.
Like, it
Yeah,
doesn't even matter.
definitely.
Like, I could even just make the thumbnail and maybe
Yeah,
just have like game footage of just Cuphead. Have nothing else in the video, and we'll probably still get 50 to 100,000 reviews just
definitely.
because of those topics. But there's no meat on the bone for me there. There's no reason, and again, this is why typically when a game blows up, I try not to cover as much, because there's nothing more there. That,
Yeah,
if 500 YouTubers and streamers cover a game like Elden Ring, and again, that's on the low side, or they cover a game like Marvel's Avengers, what else hasn't already been said about it? Of course, I could make a
right.
dissenting opinion video, but then I'm looked at like, oh, you
Oh,
only
you're
made
just
this.
being an edgelord or something.
Yep.
And see, the thing is and when we talk about like current games, like when we do talk about Elden Ring or Diablo more, we're not talking about the game itself. We're talking about aspects of the game
Mm-hmm.
or things about it that the game is bringing about to the game world. So we're not really discussing the game itself, in that sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, and because who cares? People already covered it. And again, it's that challenge when it comes to looking at some of these games. That, I saw people looking up some of my videos of a game that, 5, 6 years ago, because I'm the only one who played it through,
Yeah.
like Too Dark. Which, if you want a hidden, that's not so much a hidden gem, but if you want a hidden jank game, Too Dark is on that list. And again, like when it comes to the non-prestige side, there are a lot of indie games that probably less than $5, sometimes less than $3, that are just this fantastic concept of a game. And again, if you don't have people who know about them, they don't have people buying them, it becomes harder to improve. That let's say that you release 3 games a year, 3 super small games, and one of them is this dynamite idea, but let's say you only got 20 copies sold, 5 reviews. How are you going to know that that is a really great idea? That, let's say and as you said earlier, when it comes to polish, that polishing comes down to time and money. And it's something that you only have such a limited amount of.
Yeah.
You can't take every one of your ideas and say, I'm going to spend 5 years developing this out. You want to pick that one idea that you know is going to resonate with people. And again, with something like Vampire Survivors, that it's a game that in its most unpolished state, at, very early, the very first version of early access, it was blowing up. It got a lot of people to recognize it. But that is not the norm, as we all know. That most games that have that unique element to them, they're not getting noticed. And again, it's that very vicious cycle of, well, if it didn't blow up immediately, then YouTubers and streamers aren't going to cover it. And if YouTubers and streamers don't cover it, then it's not going to get picked up by IGN or Kotaku. And if they don't talk about it, then the general consumer isn't going to find out about it. And then it gets ignored by the Game of the Year awards.
Yeah. So many hidden gems. What can we do to solve this, Josh?
I think it's going to take, again, something to blow up that kind of really punches up. Again, this is why I need my own award show. I think I can
we just need to do the award show. That's all.
I bet I could beat the Game Awards with viewership. I think we can do that.
We can definitely do that. Right, Pony? We can do it.
Yep. Yep. Good luck being a... I don't think I even own a suit. But, yeah, like, as an indie developer, how do you compete with God of War? Even if your game is a dating sim RPG, if you try to release that game the same week of God of War, you got nothing. And it's kind of like the dream of an indie dev to reach the point where their game becomes that marketing moment. When it, like a Super Giant game, that, again, whatever they're working on next, when it is released, people are not going to be trying to compete with them. The same goes for maybe, I think New Blood is getting there. I don't know if they're at peak, at like kind of like that mainstream level, but they're definitely, I would say, like top of the non-prestige at the moment.
Yeah, Super Giant are wizards. Incredible game sold for $15. How are they not losing money? They're not. They're smart,
Mm-hmm.
and what I was talking about earlier is if you are driven, there's two ways you can be driven, right? Of course, it's a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if your true goal is an excellent game, and then your business model is all around the excellent game, or if you go business model and then game, right? And I think Supergiant is really good at game first, and then now how are we, like, they do all their research, and then how are we going to go around it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just is no they just have a very talented team. They've been doing it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've been carrying over their code base for a while, and it's just excellent management. Just a good group of. One thing, I bet you the
Mm-hmm.
turnover rate in Supergiant is super low.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing.
I
Just
mean,
guessing.
the person who did the narration from what was it? Bastion. I think like he's been working with them. I think on every game.
Free game. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, and I don't remember which podcast we talked about this, but one of the keys for a studio, and it's not to have 9 indie studios working on a single game, it's to have the same studio working
Mm-hmm.
together, growing together, and developing. Because, like we were saying, this skill is not learned overnight. It takes
Mm-hmm.
forever, it takes a lifetime. And it's many lifetimes put together of people working together, and they need to also work together for a long time to get their workflow down, their communications, how they're going to
Mm-hmm.
do things, their ideas, who's good at this, who's good at that. And what we were saying when we were talking about when firing like key important lead art
Mm-hmm.
directors,
The Disco
lead
Elysium people. Yep.
Disco Elysium, the lead programmers, what happens? Nothing good, right? Because the super giant, they've had, I can guarantee you they've had like 90% of the same people working on the game from day one, like in the studio, because that's the only way you get that like
Mm-hmm.
umami from their games. And each one is just so meaty and so there's just so much to it, to each
Mm-hmm.
one of their games, you know. And
Yeah.
I think that is the true secret. Turnover, replacing people, changing directors, poor management, that's just a recipe for the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's why a lot of the studios who do succeed, they focus on the long term. They
Yeah,
know
long
that
term.
their first game is not going to do Call of Duty levels or God of War levels. They just want to get a game out there and
Yeah.
start establishing themselves in the market.
Right, right. And this is something, okay, this is like a lot of some people, okay, they'll be like, you need to market your game, study your game, and do all this. And this is true. But I think you do just need to get, like we were talking about, get 3 games out there, get
Mm-hmm.
games done and get them out there and start establishing yourself. That's the only way that you're gonna do it, right? I start working a game. I get another teammate with me. Me and him start working. Me or
Mm-hmm.
her start working. We get a game going. Another person. We have a studio. We have 3, and we start working together. We've been working together for 2 years. We've
Mm-hmm.
learned each other's strengths, as GM Dukos was saying. You know, who's good at the stylized art? Who's good at the music? Who's good at the narration? Who's good at the business? Who can podcast? Who can stream? Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
all of that, you find that out as you work together. So I think one of the big differentiations there, especially in capitalism and indie game devs, is indie game devs are focusing for sure on the passion and making the game, right? And then also learning the business on the side. And the other way is business first. We're going to take this Marvel IP and make money with it.
Mm-hmm. And we do, or one of the titles I suggest is about games or the problems of focusing only on money when it comes to making a game and why that often leads to backfiring. And with kind of more the non-prestige side when it comes to the independent space, that again, I think we're in that very weird place where I think people are both more and less accepting of issues when it comes to indie games. That again, if a game is only $5, $10, and let's say there are issues with it or problems like that, people are like, okay, yeah, it's good like this, but there's a problem there. But as we've seen with all the indie devs or all the amazing indie games that are getting bigger and bigger, that it has, I think, forced a lot of developers to step it up. That there comes a point where if a game is too rough, it kind of overshadows any of the good or any of the work that gets put into it.
Definitely, definitely for sure. You have to reach that medium point between we were talking about time, budget, polish, and you have to get that medium and you have to at least reach that medium point. One of the key aspects that they've been doing though, like you were saying, is that really nice, attractive price point because $60 is not an attractive price point, but man, $3, $4, like the $2 game, and everybody's talking about it. That's really hard to say no to, and then you can really rack up the sales in that regard. Or you could have a $60 game that most of us are going to be like, I don't know, and you'd have to market it really, really hard.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you mean $70? And I think then they raised the MSRP now.
Yeah, $70.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Actually, I think it should be like 89. I think if it followed inflation, right, it should be like $90. Yeah.
And again, it raises that question of what exactly you're getting for your money. And it's something that we see that cuts both ways. That a lot of AAA developers, given that prestige factor, they're trying to sell you on, the glitz of the game, the prestige of that game. You can say that you're one of the people who play the new God of War or The Last of Us 2 or whatever. But again, from a gameplay perspective, from an actual playability perspective, you're oftentimes not getting $70 or $80 of a game, and that's a whole nother topic. And then,
I mean, would you pick because you're there's no there's not there's not different gameplay, there's not something new or unique. So really, you're watching it's an emotional movie kind of thing. Would you pay $60 to go see a movie that you had? I mean, say 70. Let's 70. Let me start correcting it there. I mean, that's the thing though. Like, so those AAAs, really the only thing they offer differently is maybe like a story, an interesting story with no other interesting game play.
And again, like there are a lot of people who I think are like, to pony something from earlier, they're afraid of criticizing these games. It's like criticizing Citizen Kane or Casablanca and so on.
Right. That is a tangent that people are very. How dare you talk about The Last of Us, or how can you say Horizon Zero Interest? You know what I mean? Like that's very strange. That I find like people are so afraid to that they put them so high on a pedestal and they're afraid to attack them when really there is no perfect game, right? There is no perfect game at all. They're full of flaws, as you know. Every single game has flaws, and every developer that worked on it would say there was 1,000 things that we wanted to do that we didn't get to do in it. And so no game would be perfect. And even if they got those 1,000 things in there, it probably wouldn't even be perfect still. And so man, I lost my train of thought there, Josh.
Yep. And I think to your point that every game has an intended market. And I think the prestige aspect is trying to make like again, like that show that everyone must watch.
Yeah.
Breaking Bad. The old NBC quote. Must see
Must
TV.
see
That
TV.
you must watch Friends every week or Seinfeld or stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
Ultimate FOMO.
hmm but with video games, there's just such a diverse market. Yeah, exactly, Pony. There's a horror concept right there. You must watch nothing but NBC and CBS, or the bomb goes off if you try to
Yeah.
change the
No,
channel.
no, Josh. You need to watch Game Wisdom,
Yeah,
or the bomb goes off.
there we go. And with like kind of non-prestige games, I think again, oh god, that would cause so much death right there, Pony.
I'm not playing ranked. I'm playing unranked.
I'm not playing at all. I'm staying far away from that one. And with like non-prestige games, I think going back to like that transactional aspect, or the non-transactional aspect behind them, that it's kind of like what you get out of a non-prestige game is, well, a very solid game.
Yep.
But again, it's that question of what do you do with that? And I think that's where we get to kind of like this murky area. That, if every one of your friends is playing Overwatch or Valorant or whatever, you get you get you get to have, you like Valorant, I like Valorant. Oh, I hope that's not a sound clip I want to get out there.
They're gonna cut that out.
Yeah. But if you say, hey, I really like Library of Runa or Ask Libra Revision or Tinykin, everyone's gonna be like, what?
Yeah.
What did you just say? Is that a word? Is that a game?
And there's also this little bit extra. They're like, what? Why are you trying to be like fancy? You're not playing Horizon Zero Dawn. You're trying to play some niche indie game.
Mm-hmm.
There's also like this little backwards effect also that people seem to have for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You played a neural conscious, so what?
I have. Yeah, and again, I think it's like that level of cloud. Like you can see this with like the esports people. Like, I keep seeing everyone both adoring and making fun of that Phasey clan, whatever they're called, Phasey clan.
Phasey.
And it just seems like they're. I'm going to get in trouble for this. Like, it just seems like they're bad for games, because every time they try to bring up some kind of comment or suggestion about game design or game dev, every game developer mocks them for their thoughts on it. And again, like with a lot of big name Twitch streamers and YouTubers, like whenever there's a big name game, I expect to see 20 to 30 videos of them playing it. And not content enough. Yeah, we need more monocles when it comes to covering games, right? And why, again, it's that question of, I think it's like that difference between like really playing games to study them and grow, and just playing them for the prestige of playing them. To say, hey, I played, I beat Super Mario, or I beat Elden Ring, or I'm ranked whatever in Street Fighter.
Rank. And that's, I think that is a very important point, Josh. Like, if you're for studying game design, which is like what we're doing here, is we study game design, is that you want to study non-prestige games way more than you want to study AAA. You do want to see them. You're going to want to see where they're going, where they're headed. But there's so much more you can learn from non-prestige games, like in every facet, from core gameplay loops, for mechanics. How did they do the art with the restrictions? They only had one artist. How did they pull off that design? How did they pull off that sound like that? There's so much you can take away. But if I was to say all of those things, those ideas, how did they do the art? How did they do the music? How did they do the programming? And if I took all those questions and I took them to, say, Horizon Zero Dawn, I don't know, 300 people did it, right? That's how it was done. There was a massive team, 300 people and $1 quadrillion did it, right? But how did a small indie team of three people pull off that AI? How did they pull off that art style? So I think that studying non-prestige games for sure is way more important for your growth as a game developer,
Mm-hmm.
your growth as a game designer, someone who studies, who writes about it, then you will pull way more value out of it than you ever could again from playing a AAA regurgitated a game.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's that issue of everyone trying to do the same thing, everyone trying to squeeze through that same door.
Yeah,
It's why we see how many fan sites and review sites covering Nintendo, or even just going even drilling that down further, just covering Pokemon, or they just cover Call of Duty, and whatever that is, it's great that you do that, but how do you build off of that? It's, I think, one of the issues we see from a lot of YouTubers and streamers who just cover prestige games, or they cover whatever is the hit game. They make their entire identity about the latest Marvel
that
game,
game, yeah.
or God of War, or Last of Us, and then
Where
what
do
do
you
you
go?
do?
What do you do? Yeah. I guess in that respect, all you do is just hop on from the next game to the next game. But if you're not skilled in playing it, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I don't know. I don't know what you do. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
there, Josh.
Mm-hmm. And it's harder, again, I think, again, like, to one of my final points as a quick time check, we're probably an hour and 17 in, but one of the major points between non-prestige and prestige games is that non-prestige games typically focus on long-term success rather than short-term. A game like Library of Ruina, or Slay the Spire, or Gunfire Reborn, they were not getting hundreds of thousands of sales and recognition day one. Let's see. What is Gunfire at right now? I
Yeah, I was
know
just about to look that up.
Library of Ruina has actually, I think, succeeded, or has done a lot better. I think they're over 10,000 reviews now. Oh, they're
Good
just
deal.
shy of 15,000. And I can
Ah,
guarantee you, it was not close to that when the game first officially came out of early access last year.
when was the release? Last year?
Yeah, it was official release. It was in early access for like 2 years, I think.
Okay.
And Gunfire Reborn right now is sitting at just under 70,000 reviews. So Gunfire, again, like, that is one of those games that I think is the perfect example of kind of that slow burn for a non-prestige game that I played, again, very early into its early access. I was like, there is something there. Like, I'm really enjoying it. And it took a while. And I think for a lot of developers who are going early access, like, their goal is the early access is the slow burn. 1.0 is kind of big time success.
Yeah,
But even that is very hard to pull off.
definitely very hard to pull off. It's definitely a strategy to do though, for sure. And then I guess if I were to go on my no crash Josh. I guess I'm gonna go on my final point here again. I'm just gonna repeat that again, is that um non-prestige games, study them. They
Mhm.
are the bread and butter, the soul, the heart. And you're gonna take away so much more than you can with AAA games. And just keep it simple there.
Mhm. And
Maybe
it
means yes.
and when we see these games blow up, it's important to understand what they did. It's not just because they have a hot new IP, or they spent millions of dollars on budgets. It's sometimes about why the gameplay resonated with people. And it's
Right.
why we see, I think, a lot of indie devs really experimenting with their designs. That they're just trying to do something different. And it's because for a lot of them, they want to make those games. They want to make that survival horror driving sim, or that first person cooking spaceship builder, or whatever crazy idea they have, and hoping that people come along for that trip. But when you, again, getting back to this issue of prestige versus non prestige, when your initial goal is just, I want to sell $1.2 million, and that, sell a game that earns that amount of money, or it has to have at least 800,000 copies sold. That's not really a good spot to start for a game, or start to make a game that's going to resonate with people.
Right. And like we said, consumers are so educated and so aware,
Mm-hmm.
and they can smell that from a mile away. I mean, you can definitely see it. It's in the bones of the game, and you can tell, okay, this game was definitely a business model skinned with a game on top,
Mm-hmm.
right? For sure, Josh.
Yep. And yeah,
Deck Builder Metroidvania. Have we done that one yet?
I think for when we get to the AAA side, there is that push for metrics that, again, if the game doesn't sell or have this amount of copies sold, then who cares?
Who cares? Yep.
And again, it's then about, okay, let's just, if the game did, 100,000 copies game one, then surely the next game should get 500,000 copies. And then, 3 million copies. And this led to kind of the downfall of survival horror. That, even the most popular survival horror game back in the 2000s, Resident Evil 4, it still was not pulling Call of Duty numbers, or Battlefield numbers, or World of Warcraft numbers. And you have to accept, I think, at the end of the day, that there is a limit to the success of a game. That, again, there is no the game. There is no one game that's going to have 100% market value or market retention. And trying to chase after that with whatever, Hollywood-esque design you want, or paint-by-numbers gameplay, it's not going to work.
Yeah, and you know what? Like the best analogy for saying that there is no one game is there is football, there's basketball, there's so many different sports or games to play. There's not one game that everybody plays, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody likes something different. So for sure.
Mm-hmm. So I think with that, I think I'm just about all out of points. Anything else from you?
I think that's about it. I think we summed it up pretty well. Are From Software games prestige games? I'm gonna say they are prestige at this point, right?
Yeah. I think they're non-prestige games that everyone treats as prestige games.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go with that. Non-prestige games treated as prestige. Yeah, definitely.
And where is Bloodborne on the PC already? From Software. Come
It
on.
has been released, but it's they haven't upgraded the graphics. It's low poly
Mm-hmm.
with racing in it or something. I'm not sure.
Crash Team Racing, yeah.
Definitely no, but that pretty much sums it up, man. Non-prestigious games again. Just one more time, they are wealth of informations. When you want to study game design, that's where you want to go. Like I don't know what you can take away from a AAA game other than, okay, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of time in it, and a lot of people worked on it, and maybe a decent story was written. But if you play something such as a Vampire Survivor or what was it, Cavity Busters or
Yeah.
something like that, you're going to see something and see new mechanics and see certain different ways that you can change things up, and maybe something that you can take from it and develop into your own game, right?
Mm.
So for sure, Josh, that pretty much sums it up. Don't forget to join the Discord, Josh Discord. Buy 10 books. Wish
Mm-hmm.
list, my game below Samurai Pig. There's also Rooster Rampage, which might actually get a demo before Samurai Pig. Pony was asking about Samurai Pig.
Mm-hmm.
Rooster Rampage might actually get one before that shortly, due to a Splinter Cell indie game studio that that's helping me with it. So that might come out shortly. So just follow me on Twitter for now, and we'll see where we can go. And then join us in the Discord as always.
Mm-hmm.
Josh.
To Artem's comment, the cynical part of me is wondering, like, do you mean mining games like the crypto miners, the ones that are breaking games, or you mean mining as in Minecraft Factorio? Poultry versus zombies.
Yeah, that's my game. It's Poultry versus Zombies.
And while waiting for that last comment, yeah, like, I think like everyone like should aspire to be like Miyazaki from Elden Ring, and that like he just makes games like he doesn't really like care about I think what everyone else is saying. He's like, so why you put poisonous swamps? Like, well, I like poisonous swamps. I want
Poisonous swamps.
every game needs poisonous swamps.
And one thing that he said, Miyazaki said, is that he would read, I guess like he would read books, right? But in English, and so he wasn't. He would read them, and he wasn't sure what it was like, and so he was kind of imagining it. So in his head, he wanted to create what reading an English book of like that mystery was in there. So he was reading like about poisonous swamps or whatever in English, and then converted it over. So that's some of the reason why it's so mysterious is because the mystery of him reading the book, he wanted to translate that over to a game. Wild.
And again, like with like Elden Ring and From Software, they're just like, yeah, we're just gonna put all this death and you can miss the tutorial. And
you can die in the tutorial.
Yeah, and then Lake of Rot and so on. And like I said, I think that's why they're like non-prestige games that people treat as prestige, because they don't really, I think, care as much about winning Game of the Year or being like this huge success. Like, they kind of just, I think, fell into it with Demon Souls and Dark Souls. I think it's why a lot of other studios are just like having like fits over, you can just get hit by a boulder and die, or now there's a lava pin. You just, why isn't that being conveyed? Or, why aren't you filling in this story with 20 minutes of cutscenes?
There was no cutscene before the lava pit. What is going on?
I do like mining games, logistics games. Like, I can certainly rant and rave about that at some point. And we can get, like, I can't even think of, like, who I would get for, like, an influential
or
games.
Something like that.
Okay, for, like, that kind of topic. But, yeah, I definitely want to talk about that. So, I think the only other thing left to say is tune in next week, as our topic is going to be all about the Game of the Year awards. And then we'll see how we can maybe do something talking about the actual show when it goes live. I think that's the 8th.
When does it go? It's on the 8th? Okay.
I believe so.
So let's pencil that in.
So I think with that said, again, you won't follow me on Twitter for however long it stays relevant. All my stuff is up there. It's down below. Who knows how many more social media platforms we'll sign on to between now and the end of 2023.
Right.
I was going to say, and I will be back around 9:30 tonight for my game stream.
All right.
So, and we'll be back, we'll go back to our regular time Saturday.
Yeah.
That will be around 5 p.m. ET. So be sure to tune in then. Everyone, again, do liking, subscribing, and commenting. Have a great rest of your night. Don't go too broke with Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and all that. And come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where you examine the art and science of games. Until next time, everybody, take care.